When we talk about DeFi protocols, it's always important to distinguish the aspects of it. So on one hand, you have the infrastructure, the thing that actually produces a service, and in turn a revenue, and in turn a profit or a loss, and you have the token on the other end. And sometimes, unfortunately, these two don't go hand in hand, meaning doing trades or performing any activity on the platform, providing liquidity, and owning the token are not always aligned in terms of profitability and in terms of vision. In the case of Uniswap, which is, by the way, the first decentralized exchange to hit the market on Ethereum back in 2018 or so, it's very important to have this distinguish, because today we're not going to be discussing the protocol, because granted the protocol is top tier, they do have the majority of the volume capture, they do produce lots of fees, they do have several business models around them, and many people are actually living off of Uniswap. Today we're gonna be mainly focusing on the token, because the idea that a governance token should exist for me is falsehood, meaning nothing really is happening, because in the case of Uni here, you have VC backing, meaning you have people who entered at the ground level, who own the majority of the supply, which is, by the way, approximately 75% in circulation versus the total supply, meaning there will be more tokens that will be unlocked. And these guys will basically have a say in whatever happens. If we click on this, you will see who are the major investors. Let me go back here. So basically, governance, quote unquote, is handheld by these guys. So whatever they want to do, so whatever Uniswap Labs wants to do, it will be decided by the minority in terms of entities, but the majority in terms of Uni holdings. So first thing you would notice in this model is that owning Uni doesn't give you pretty much any value whatsoever, unless you want to speculate on its value up or down. Now, the only places where you can actually use Uni is potentially as collateral. Now, if I go to Aave.com and if I go to the Ethereum market, this is where potentially I'll be seeing any DeFi use case whatsoever for the Uni token. Because on one hand, you cannot use it to earn any fee from the protocol, because all fees are split between the entity behind Uniswap and the LP providers. So Uni cannot be staked, even though they tried to pass a proposal, it's still pending, but I don't see this happening anytime soon, if at all whatsoever. So, and if it were to happen, what will happen eventually is that that portion will either be taken away from LPers or taken away from the entity. And of course, potentially when they provide this governance proposal, my guess is that LPers will take the cut. And if that were to happen, that would be disastrous, because competition will take over. And if you go on DeFilemma, actually, you will see that overall, the weekly change, for example, in terms of volume, they are technically the only DEX in the red between quotation mark, even though that percentage is quite small, but still. And if we average this throughout the year, you have many DEXs, namely Aerodrome, who's been taking market share from Uniswap, at least on base, because Aerodrome is only on base. And Uniswap is basically everywhere. So that alone gives you the idea that even with the current situation, market share is being kind of taken away slowly. What if less fees will go to LP providers? What will happen then? I can guarantee you that the shift will accelerate and go faster than it already is. So like I said, I wanted to quickly show that right now the only quote-unquote use case for Uni is potentially be used as collateral. So if I click on show assets with zero balance, I scroll down, here it is. So it's an isolated market. It doesn't provide any staking or any deposit fees whatsoever, because there isn't much use for it. And by the way, just FYI, isolated markets means that they have limited borrowing power, and that's a problem. Whereas you have other assets right now, like I gave the example of Aerodrome's AERO token, which can actually be used as collateral on other platforms, several by several, I mean two, and also you can use it elsewhere. You can pair it, you can do many things with it. Now, Uni, of course, you can still provide liquidity with, like pair it with USDC and get fees, but it's not actually a situation where I would basically bet the house on, because at the end of the day there isn't much volume outside of sexes when it comes to these things, and it's essentially, and I would add that overall it's not really an asset that you really want to hold on to, because at the end of the day it did drop a lot from its all-time high, because altcoins by nature will always be dominated by centralized entities like venture capitalists, and because of this, while tokens are getting unlocked, these VCs will take profits, will basically capitalize on the unrealized gains that they've been sitting on and take advantage of all of this. Now, I would add to this the idea behind the whole concept of governance. Now, of course, we've touched base on what governance is overall, but giving power to the people is basically what this is about. So everyone has the freedom to own Uni tokens and to participate in voting in proposals that are put forth. But the illusion at the end of the day comes from the idea that you need a lot of influence to shift the tides in any favor whatsoever. In most of these proposals, you will see like 80% at least weighted on one decision, and then you have a bit of split overall. So at the end of the day, whatever the big boys decide will happen. Now, we're not taking anything away from the idea that Uniswap Labs actually introduces lots of novelty. Now, they're the ones who created V2, V3, and now they're coming up with V4, and all the other DEXs followed suit in that regard. So they are actually providing potentially the biggest innovation hub possible when it comes to DEXs. And right now they're working on something called Uniswap X, where you will be able to seamlessly transact, like bridge and swap basically in one transaction. And the cool part here is that if you have a failed transaction, you don't pay gas fees, because gas fees will be embedded within the transaction. So it's priced in. If the trade doesn't happen, meaning you're not paying anything. If it happens, meaning you do, which is quite cool in my personal opinion. And it helps when volatility is sky high and you want to do a quick trade, and in most cases that will be failing, so you do a couple of tries, you lose some money. Granted, in most cases not much, but for example on the Ethereum chain it's a lot. So having a couple of failed transactions can cost you a couple of dollars, and you would avoid that if the price is embedded within the swap itself, which is pretty nice in my personal opinion. So conclusion at the end of the day, the distinction here is very obvious. So the DEX trilemma, which is a term coined by the founder of Aerodrome, is that at the end of the day there are three participants. You have LPers, swappers, and token holders, and all three should be benefiting equally. In the case of Uniswap, two are, so swappers and LPers, but uni holders or token holders aren't, because the token is essentially not doing anything. It's not a productive asset, unlike AERO, and it's just prone to speculation and at the mercy of these venture capitalists. So for me, I wouldn't, buy Uni. I would potentially, for example, earn it through Merkle rewards if I'm providing liquidity, but I would sell it immediately. The upside potential risk is too small for it to be a nice hold long term. Now, if they do want to be using Uni in the future to earn fees, that would be good for holders, but then LPers will take the cut. So the trilemma is still favorable, for example, for the likes of Aerodrome. And at the end of the day, people should understand what they're getting into. Now, DeFi users love Uniswap, of course, because they don't care about the token, they care about the platform. And that's me, for example. But retail, looking at this from a wider angle, is a bit more complicated than that if they don't use the protocol itself. Now, we do have a project of our own. We have been, adamant into providing value for people who just want to put their USDC in. and they just want to basically take advantage of a more or less stable return between 50 and 60% overall on their USDC, and they would be, they would be very basically exposed to the likes of Uniswap and Aerodrome and Velodrome. We have several videos on this. Our project's name is Numerical. You can check the website. So numerical.fi is actually the main website, and you can also go on the app, which is what I'm gonna go to right now. And this is what I'm talking about, right? So this is the current APR based on the prior epoch. And if you click on the vault, you will see that it's backdated. Each 10 days, this is updated, and then the new APR reflects the rewards earned, in the prior epoch. And like I said, check it out, understand what it's about. The main website will be linked below, the app, the good book, the Telegram announcement channel, and our public channel. So feel free to ask questions if you have them, and see you in the next one. Have a good one.